Have you ever felt like you were just drowning in your thoughts? Like it was like a nonstop thunderstorm of just noise in your head. And then it makes you feel in your body, it's either anxiety or depression, tightness, and then you just don't know what to do or how to get out of it. Then this video is for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few methods where you can actually step away from the chaos of your thoughts and really stop listening to them and choose a different feeling, right? That it can become positive in your life. So what I want to do is I want to start this off with a story. So I believe we all go through traumatic events in our lives, right? And what I have realized is there's a learning in every single one of them. So what I want to share with you is one of them. One of the events that happened in my life was I had a business with my older brother. You might have heard the story. And he passed away. Then I was in charge of like 30 employees and, running the company. I was the man in the back, right? No one ever saw me, but I technically ran the company, right? So when he passed away, I had to take over, which, it was fight or flight at that point, right? Because, I just had to step into that power, find whatever resources that I had and take over. But then after that storm calmed down, right? After I was able to, keep the company going and I had, somewhat, some sort of balance back. This was where I went from the storm to another storm, but it was more like the bottom of a well, right? If you ever experienced something that was like so emotionally draining, it could have been a high, it could have been a low, right? Like what happened to me when my brother passed away, and then all of a sudden everything else kind of settles, right? Like the dust settled, and then you're kind of left there, right? And this place, if you've ever experienced this place, it's almost, it's nothing like after it rains, right, where it's usually serene and calm, but there's this feeling about it that when all that dust settled, it was just me, right? I felt alone, right? Because there was all these people to support in the beginning when this event happened, and then it was just me. But it wasn't just me. It was me and my thoughts. Now, this is something very important that I want you to realize, is that at times when we experience something in our lives, we're left alone, right? But with the chaos of our thoughts, we have about, there's different studies about this, but we have about 60,000 thoughts per day that go on in our mind, right? And about 95% of them are all either past, right? From the past, they're really like repetitions of something, just churning, right? Like of old thoughts of like yesterday's of last year. So we have, right? We have about 45,000 thoughts that are repetitive, right? So this is a situation that I was caught in, right? So after the storm, right, I was in my truck. I felt horrible. I felt this feeling in my body that was just, I don't know if you ever gotten that feeling, that's that tightness in your stomach, right? You feel that pressure all over your body, right? I was literally in my truck under, we lived in Colorado at the time, under a highway overpass, right? And all I could think of was, and again, I use that word on purpose, all I was thinking was, this is the most horrible thing that's ever happened. I felt alone. I felt at that point like I really wanted to take my own life, right? Because I felt alone. I felt cornered. I felt, even though, I had family around me, I had, the business was moving along, there were still some challenges, but I felt so alone, right? But then I realized, right, it wasn't that I was alone. It was these thoughts, right? It was these 45,000 thoughts that were all from the past, right? And there's something that I realized afterwards that, we have a negative bias as part of us, meaning that we have, our nervous system, we have different parts that are there to protect us, right? So that way you don't put your hand on the stove, right? And you learn and then you won't do it again. So there's the thoughts from the past, right? Those 45,000 per day are usually going to be something of, to protect you from something from the past. And guess what my thoughts were in that moment, sitting under the overpass, listening to the trucks as they drove by, sitting there by myself, right, with my phone turned off, because I did not want to speak to anybody. I felt so alone that I just didn't see any other purpose to live, right? And then it hit me. It was a choice. There was something, there was a whisper. I don't know what it was, but something that just told me, like, don't pay attention to those thoughts, right? It was my choice, right? So what I did was, I actually, from that moment, I started looking for help. I started, outreaching. I started coming out of my box. I started waking up, right? But what I was waking up from is from detaching myself from those thoughts. I was so engrossed in the pain from the experience that I had, that after the dust settled, it was just me and the thoughts. And 45,000 of those thoughts per day were all from the past, and the majority of them were all negative, right? So then, once I did that separation, and the step number one, if you're going through something and you really want to break free and detach it, and you feel that tightness in your stomach, right? Like, this is not where I want to be, right? Know that first, that feeling that you're getting, that's the very first sign. See, because what happens is, by the time you have your thoughts, right? And then, they travel through, we have an inner conversation, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then they travel to your feeling. Your feeling is in your body, right? It's somewhat your emotions, but that's the number one thing that I felt, that, this can't be it, right? I can't just be sobbing and asking myself, why is this happening to me? And that is what I realized was my victim mentality at the moment, right? It was woe is me, and that really did not help me in any situation. So what I did was, I took that feeling, right, and that built up emotion inside, and I knew I had to do something different, right? But then what I realized was, again, those thoughts, they're not me. It was a choice. So we have about 60,000 thoughts per day, right? There's different studies on that amount, and they were between 40 to 60. But we can only process certain amount of thoughts, right? So we consciously are going to choose which thoughts we're going to focus on, right? And whatever you focus on, whatever thoughts that you shine the light on, right? It's almost like a dark room, right? And that's how I felt, right? I was in a dark room with all these thoughts, right? And I was shining a light in these just specific little group of thoughts. And guess what they were? They were all negative, right? So once I changed the light to focus on a different set of thoughts that were more empowering, that were, you don't have to stay here, right? Like, that's when I physically, right, chose to do something different, to get myself out of there, right? And that was a process and a journey. But the very first step is to know, what thoughts are we actually focusing on from those 60,000 thoughts that we're having per day. If you're feeling in your body something that's not positive, something that might be sadness, something that maybe there's a tightness, maybe there's, grief, anger, whatever that is not positive, then you have to look at what thoughts you're looking at, right? Now, by the time I was able to change my thoughts, then I realized there was another thing in between that I had to overcome and then change. That's my self-talk. Self-talk, if you ever heard it, it's your thoughts are just there. Your thoughts are always going to be there. You cannot really, you can start changing your thoughts, but thoughts, 60,000, thoughts per day, good luck. I mean, it's like 60,000, wild horses running in your, in your psyche, right? So you're not going to be able to control them. So what you want to do is start focusing on them. And the way you focus on them is your self-talk. And your self-talk, this is very powerful, that you can start focusing on. Is your self-talk is that inner conversation that you have in your head, right? Normally, we should be our best friend, right? We should be empowering ourselves. We should be, patting ourselves in the back. We should be, be our biggest cheerleader, they say, right? But at times in our lives, especially when you experience certain things, or you might have, past experience that are still coming up, and, I'll talk about that more in the channel. There's some videos on that as well, that we have, bottled up negative emotions that just keep that stagnant in us. And that's actually what the majority holds us back, old limiting beliefs, right? But let's go back to our talking point here. So once you shine the light on those specific thoughts, and you're able to change it, right? Identify those thoughts that you're thinking of, and then consciously choose you want to do something else or think of something else, right? Then you look at your self-talk. Your self-talk is it's going to be, kind of like your best friend. And this is something that, we need to start working on, to be able to choose those different thoughts, right? To identify, for me, under, that, highway overpass, sitting in my truck, just at one of the lowest points that I've been in my life, my self-talk was that whisper. It's like, make a different choice, right? It was very quiet, right? But I decided to choose something else. And then over time, the self-talk, becomes more positive, right? But what you have to understand is that self-talk, it's based on, there's like three parts to it, right? So the self-talk is created, and usually it's created from our adolescent, from our parents, from our beliefs, right? And I've talked about this. There's a child, kind of identity in there, and then there's a critical parent, and then there's an adult. The adult is irrational. The other two are more emotional. So that point for me, when I was under that viaduct, I was just wrapped up and buried in negative emotion of the experience that I had, right? So what we want to do is start identifying the self-talk. Once you start choosing different thoughts and you're aware of it, you want to start changing your self-talk. And self-talk, you can start by just identifying it. Journaling has been very powerful for me. If you're not a writer, you can, record something on your phone, but just to get it out, just to identify the self-talk is step number one, to see if, how positive it is. Maybe it's not so positive, right? But you want to start changing in the process of your self-talk. Affirmations, I'll talk about in other videos. I did affirmations for years and years, and they just didn't work, but that was because I had a block. A emotional block that was resisting those affirmations, right? So your self-talk is really important. You want to find out what's that inner conversation going on in your mind. So once you identify what your inner conversation is, and your inner conversation is specifically based on those thoughts, right? But also your feelings. Your feelings is number one, because that's going to be in our body, right? Like when you get that tightness in your stomach, your chart, or your chest starts tightening up, that's like, bam, that should be an alert, right? That, hey, my self-talk and my thoughts are not what I want. Let's change it, right? So there's a couple things. So I want to talk about a couple ways that you can immediately start feeling better. The number one is awareness, right? You know that there's some sort of thoughts that possibly are not, positive, and then your self-talk, right? And this is something that's going to develop over time. So you're feeling. So what you want to do is, your goal at that point is to be able to get another feeling, right? Maybe you want to feel happier, or maybe you just feel so tight and stressed that your goal is to change that feeling. And the way you change that feeling, right? Choose different thoughts, but also sometimes it's hard. It's not that easy, especially like you're in the early stages of changing your self-talk and then choosing your thoughts. What you want to do is change your environment, right? Physiology is very important. So when you start feeling that, move your body, go for a walk, be by nature. If you can't, go physically for a walk, maybe just kind of sit by yourself, go talk to someone, call a friend, something that's going to snap you out of it. It's very important. Do some jumping jacks, something to bring that energy back into your body, right? Because what that does, it brings you into the present moment. That's the best way for you to be able to break away from those thoughts. Because remember, roughly 45,000 of those thoughts per day are all repetitive, right? And usually they're not positive, right? They're just churning something else. So you want to come back to the present moment. So that feeling that you're getting is all based on repetitive thoughts, old stuff, right? So you want to come back to the moment, and that's how you do it, or at least one of the ways is physically move your body to bring you to the present moment, right? For myself, as I do meditation, Zen meditation, in one of the following videos, I'll give you more details on that, but essentially it's breathing. Breathing is one of the best ways for you to become mindful and to come to the present moment. So what you can also do, if you can't physically move, or if there's some restraints, or maybe you're feeling anxiety, you're in a plane, right? Where the heck are you going to go in the plane if you're feeling anxiety? Just take deep breaths, deep belly breaths. Take at least 10 of them. But you can continuously count to 10, in and out, in and out. And then that's going to calm your nervous system, right? Because you're getting more oxygen to them. And preferably for myself, there's different ways, but I just breathe from my nose, because what that does, it gives you the same exact oxygen in and out, right? Instead of going through your mouth. But do whatever feels right for you, but you want to breathe, right? And that's why by moving your body physically, right, you're breathing, you're engaging more in your body, you're breathing more, you're breathing heavily, and that's going to calm your nervous system, okay? So that's one step. And there's other steps, but that's the very first one. You want to start physically moving, start breathing, right? Start, in the moment. That will help you quite a bit to calm down. But just remember, you want to start shining a different light on those 60,000 thoughts per day, right? Because it is your choice, right? It's not an easy choice in the beginning, but once you start doing it, you start training it. Remember the analogy that I used, like you have 60,000 thoughts per day. Well, those are 60,000 wild stallions running around in your psyche, right? There's no way you're going to be able to, control all of them. So what you can do, you can start training them, right? You are the trainer. You are the observer. And what you want to start seeing as those thoughts is to be able to separate yourself, from them, and know that those aren't you, right? They're all just made up from your childhood, your adolescent, people you heard, your experiences, beliefs, right? And then that you want to start coming back to the present moment, right? And that feeling that you're receiving, it's a good sign, because it's actually telling you need to do something. Your body is your vessel. Your body is like a tuning fork. We want to use our body as our signals, right? As our signals of what's going on in our psyche. We have everything for us in this world, and specifically one of the greatest gifts that we have is our body. Our body tells us, if you're, for many years my eyes would twitch, right? Or I would have little convulsions. I'm not a doctor, but most of it was all stress related, right? Until I was able to calm my nervous system down, right? With the different methods that I teach you here in this YouTube channel. That's when you start getting control of your life. And you start feeling, and you're able to break free, right, from the limits and the blocks that you have. So that way you start gaining more clarity of who you are, what it is that you want to do, what is your superpower, right? And then you can start feeling more empowered to step into that, right? To step into your power, right? To step into your purpose. And then essentially your goal is to start becoming free, to build a life that you deserve and that you desire. So I hope you found this useful. And again, if you are, just captured like I was inside my thoughts, first know that you have 60,000 thoughts per day. 45,000 of them, roughly, are all repetitive, right? And they're not going to be all positive. And if you start feeling something in your body, like tightness, or, like your belly, like, something that's not positive feeling, what you want to do is start finding out that, or at least be aware of, right, that you are shining the light on not so positive thoughts. You want to change that light, right? And the way you do that is you want to monitor your self-talk, right? You want to monitor that too. Journaling is a great way to do it. And that way you can start changing that as well. And I'll talk about more on other videos as well. And then to change that feeling initially is just start moving. Go for a walk, right? Meditate, but breathe in and out. That's the best way to come present moment, so you can break away from those thoughts, that we can start feeling better. So I hope you found this video useful. Subscribe to the channel if you found it useful, or share with friends that might be able to benefit from it. I'll be sharing a lot more tips. And as well, thank you once again for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next video.